Hello?
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm sitting here trying to figure out what game should be the first one that gets reviewed. I mean, it's a premiere episode of the show, so it's kind of a big deal, and I got nothing. I mean, I've got so many games, I can't decide.
Well, you know what helps me is a walkabout.
A walkabout?
Yep, that definitely helps. It clears the mind, and you got plenty of time to think about stuff.
I guess. Yeah, okay, sure, why not? Nothing else has worked. I'll give it a try. Thanks. Nothing. Hey everybody, Game Master Mike here. This is the premiere episode of GeekStorm GameTable. What do? We review tabletop role-playing games, but that's not all. I mean, you don't want to see some guy like me sitting at a table ranting on about, page numbers and dice rolls. I mean, we're going to do some of that, but here's the thing. I peruse a lot of internet forums, and I see a lot of people asking, how does this work? How does that work? Has anyone ever done an actual play video so I can see how this operates? We're going to tackle that. And you know how in some books it'll give you an example of play, and they'll give you a little grid map and little markers showing you where characters are, and round one, this happens. We're going to do that as well. Only we're not going to do it with miniatures, we're not going to do it with markers, we're going to do it live action. So you can see it on all its bloody glory. So that's GeekStorm GameTable. That's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna tackle some awesome games. I mean, come on, how many role-playing games are out there right now? Thousands. I mean, my own personal library is huge, and that was a really tough decision because this is the premiere episode. It's kind of a big deal. And what am I gonna review? My personal favorite system? Something I think doesn't get enough attention online? In the end, I went with what has become my go-to system. For years, I was on the lookout for the one game system to rule them all. I mean, I was an early adopter of GURPS. I loved GURPS for a long time. And I just kind of fell away from that for a while, and I wanted something simpler, faster. In the end, that proved to be Savage Worlds. The tagline for this game is that it is fast, furious, and fun, and let me tell you, that's no lie. Don't take it from me, I'm just some guy in a red shirt sitting at a table. Let's ask our Manny on the street and see what he thinks. Manny?
It rocks!
Terrific. Terrific. All right then, let's get started, shall we? Savage Worlds is a product of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. It is the brainchild of Shane Lacey Hensley. To play the game, you'll need the core book, and you'll also need a set of polyhedral dice. And just to be safe, you'll probably want to have a few extra die sixes handy. And on top of that, you're also going to need at least one deck of playing cards. I know, I can hear it already. Playing cards? Oh my god, I don't need playing cards in my role playing. Okay, let's get this out of the way now. The cards are pretty awesome. They speed things up when it comes to combat dramatically. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later on, but for now, come on. If you've got a set of funky dice in your house, odds are you've got at least one deck of playing cards. If not, even dollar stores sell bicycle playing cards. Walmart, Target, anywhere. You can get themed cards. They're pretty awesome. So, Savage Worlds. The way this works, you have what are called traits. That encompasses both your physical and mental attributes like your strength, your agility, smarts, and what have you, as well as the skills that your character has learned throughout his lifetime. All of these are rated as die types, from a die 4 all the way up to a die 12. So if you're trying to accomplish something, say you're trying to climb a tree. Wait, no, trees are boring. You're trying to climb a big-ass castle wall. Yeah. So the GM says, okay, you're trying to climb the wall. Roll climb. So maybe you're pretty decent at this. No, you're pretty awesome at it. Maybe you've got a die 10 climbing skill. So you grab your die 10, but that's not all. Player characters in Savage Worlds are what they're called wild cards. Why? Think of movies, novels, comic books, actually any story ever told that has a protagonist. You're the main character. That means you're a little better than everybody else. Cinematically, you're a little more lucky. You're just a little bit better than the average Joe. To represent that, when you're trying to do a trait roll, you do not just use your skill die. You also grab a die 6, which is called a wild die. You roll both. Take the higher of the two, compare that to your difficulty number. If you meet or exceed that difficulty number, congratulations, you have now succeeded. So let's say I'm trying to climb that castle wall. I roll. I get a 5 on the 10 and a 1 on the wild die. Obviously, I want to take the 5. That's the higher of the two. Standard difficulty in Savage Worlds is generally a 4. You'll have modifiers, take away and add to, but for the most part, this will probably succeed. Here's a catcher. Dice in Savage Worlds can ace. What that means is, if you roll the maximum on either of these, you get to take that number and then roll again. So, what do you know? My wild die came up as a 6. 10 came up as a 2. I take the 6. I grab the wild die. I get to roll it again. That time I got a 3. 6 and 3, total of 9. Not too shabby. Had I got another 6 on this, take it, roll it again. As long as you keep acing, keep rolling. So you can get some pretty decent numbers if you roll well or you have lucky dice. That can be both a boon and a detractor when it comes to Savage Worlds, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. One last thing when it comes to dice rolls. Standard difficulty, like I said, is a 4. It varies. In combat, it'll be your opponent's defense. If you roll 4 or better above your target number on any roll, you have achieved what is called a raise. That means you've done exceptionally well. So, for instance, say you're looking for clues. You roll your notice. If you fail your roll, your GM may say, you find a little scrap of paper that, I don't know, tidbits of information on it. If you succeed, you find this information. But if you get a raise, you find that information and some more. Maybe you get 2 raises, you find even more. And then when it comes to combat, you can only get one raise. No matter how well you roll, you're only getting that one raise. But what that does is, the way combat works is you roll your attack. If you succeed, you then roll damage dice. So if you get a raise on your attack roll, it gives you an extra die 6 to add on to whatever your damage dice roll is. Like for instance, a pistol is generally a 2 die 6 damage. So if you get a raise to hit with a pistol, instead of rolling 2 die 6, grab 3. And then when it comes to damage dice, they all add together. And they can ace. So you can get some pretty hellacious numbers if you roll well. And again, that goes back to, it can be a boon or it can be a detractor depending on where you're coming from, but I'll talk about that later on. I mentioned the cards. What are they for? Initiative. Have you ever played a game where you have 6, 7 players and you go for initiative and everyone, rolls whatever they roll? It's kind of hard to remember. I mean, come on. Paizo, the company that does Pathfinder, they've got a magnetic board so you can keep track of stuff like that. By using cards, standard deck of playing cards, once combat begins, the GM starts handing a card to every player plus himself for bad guys and whatnot. And then it's just a countdown. Ace being the highest, deuce being the lowest. You don't even really have to look. I mean, you can look over your DM screen and you can see what everybody has. Comes in handy. But you really don't even have to do that. Just start yelling. Ace! Whoever has an ace, they go. King, queen, jack. And then in the case of similar cards, like maybe they're, 2 aces, then it's a matter of the suit of the card. Spades, I could get this wrong. I want to say it's diamonds, hearts, clubs, and it may be a reverse as far as the hearts and diamonds. But anyway, that's how that's handled. It's very quick, very easy. If someone draws a joker, they can go at any time in the round. They also get a +2 to anything they do. Kind of handy. And if a joker is drawn, the deck must then be reshuffled before it can be used again for the next round. That's why it's generally handy to have a couple of decks at least. So that's how that works. Manny, what do you think of the initiative deck for Savage Worlds?
Bueno.
One last thing when it comes to the system, to keep things a little more cinematic, that fast, furious, fun tagline, again, you're wild cards. You're the main characters. You're supposed to be badass. Bennies. For the most part, in most settings, at the beginning of the game, every character gets 3 bennies. These can be represented by custom poker chips, regular poker chips, glass beads, pennies, dimes, M&Ms, Reese's Pieces, Cheetos. It doesn't matter. Write them down. You don't even have to have a physical representation. What they do is they give you a little control over your character's fate. So, for instance, let's say, I like horror. Okay, so let's say this serial killer, he's got your girlfriend. You've got one shot to take him out, or she's gonna die. You make your roll, and you fail. A nice GM may, fudge something or other so she lives another round. Or if you're like me, you're like, sorry. What do? You just lost your girlfriend. The bad guy just won. Spend a Benny. That allows you to immediately re-roll that roll you just failed. Hopefully you do a little better. If not, hey, spend another Benny. Re-roll again. As long as you've got bennies, you can keep re-rolling. On the other side of the coin, damage. If you take damage, you can spend a Benny, which will allow you to make a vigor roll to try and reduce or eliminate the damage you just took. So if the giant stone golem brings his fist crashing down, bam, over your head, it's gonna bust like a melon because he did heller damage. Because remember, damage dice can ace. You know you're gonna die. You don't want to die. That'd kind of suck, wouldn't it? Spend a Benny, make that vigor roll. If you roll well enough, that fist of stony might, it just missed. That's pretty darn awesome. That's the basics of how Savage Worlds works. I mean, there are modifiers for this and that, but for the most part, that's it. It's very simple. Now, I know there are some people who have desired to see the game played. I've ran a few actual play games that I have videoed, and to be honest, I really don't know if anyone would want to sit through and watch an hour of me and my buddies doing what we do. Instead, we're going to show you how combat works, but instead of using tokens or miniatures or markers on a map, we're going to use actual people. So, let's take a look. Okay, now how does all this work? Let's break this down. This is our street sorcerer. His powers are a mystic shield, a fireball, and a telekinetic deflective shield. He's on the run from the mob, trying to make it back to his safe house. Hopefully, he can do that. Okay, we're now officially beginning our rounds. The street sorcerer was caught by surprise by a hitman. Lucky for him, the hitman has a code of honor. He will not shoot and kill someone until that person has seen him. And here we have our reveal of the hitman. He's pretty decent at a number of skills. Again, I mentioned the hindrance he has for the Code of Honor. And for edges, he has luck, so he has one extra Benny. Round 1, the hitman gets a King of Diamonds. The sorcerer only gets a 8 of Hearts, so the hitman goes first. Rounds 2 and 3 are pretty much the same, with the hitman going first. Unfortunately, though he is hitting, he's not doing enough damage to get through that armor shield. Round 4, on the other hand, the hitman again goes first, but this time, that spell's ran out. He does hit with a roll of a 12, it's a hit and a raise. His damage roll is a 17, against the sorcerer's toughness of 5, that's 3 wounds. The sorcerer spends a Benny, makes his vigor roll with a number of successes, allowing him to negate the damage, so those hits now miss. Round 5, the sorcerer gets to go first this round. He's choosing to aim this round, while the hitman is going to reload. Okay, round 6, the hitman gets to go after the sorcerer. Sorcerer rolls a 24 to hit with his bonus from aiming. He scores a raise, his damage roll is a 16, that's going to be 2 wounds. The hitman spends one of his bennies. He rolls a 9 on his vigor roll. That negates all the damage, so instead of a hit, it's now a near miss. The hitman's own attack, unfortunately, also misses. Round 7. Sorcerer's gonna go last. The Hitman, all he's doing is trying to get out of the way. Sorcerer's gonna throw 2 fireballs. One misses, but another he rolls a 6, so that does hit. Damage rolls an 11. It's gonna result in a wound. The Hitman does not want to get hit, so he makes his vigor roll after spending a Benny and succeeds. No wound taken. Round 8. Sorcerer goes first, barely. He activates his deflection power and rolls a 9 for a raise. It's going to give the Hitman a -4 to his shooting roll to hit. Sorcerer draws a Joker in round 9. That's going to give him a +2 to everything he does this round. Instead of attacking the Hitman, he's going to try and hit that tanker behind him and blow it up. He hits, aces on his damage roll, and the resulting damage to the Hitman is a whopping 6 wounds. After spending many bennies, he cannot soak them. The Hitman is dead. So that's how it works. So there you have it. Combat. That's how it works in Savage Worlds. It's fast. Matter of fact, this game was designed for GMs who do not have a lot of time. So if you want a fast game that you can just pick up, sit down, roll some dice, and get to it, this is your game. Creating adventures, creating creatures, characters, it is oh so simple. And combat is so fast. I mean, NPCs in this game are generally, if they're extras, which are generally, if you can think of stormtroopers in Star Wars, those would be extras. They're not main characters, they're just kind of bit players. Extras in Savage Worlds, they're either up, down, or out. That's it. And then when it comes to wild cards like yourselves, you have 3 wound levels. Plus you can take fatigue or whatnot. It's fast. And you don't have the whole tree chopping syndrome that you have with, like, say, I don't like throwing them under the bus, but Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. I was talking to a friend of mine last week. He had a game session, it was like 3-4 hours long. All it was 1 combat. That's it. I mean, have you had games like that where it's maybe you've got 5, 6, 7 players at your table, you're all pretty decent level, so you've got quite a few hit points, and then you're fighting who knows what. The way hit points work in games like that, with you raise up in levels, so you've got, say, 100 hit points. From 100 to 1, that individual is functioning perfectly fine. So it's a matter of chop, chop, chop. Keep wailing away until you whittle those hit points away until finally he's down.
No, sir, I don't like it.
That takes a long time and it's boring. Don't do it. Play Savage Worlds. One last thing I guess I should point out. Tricks. To avoid combat becoming it's easy to become, I won't say bored, but maybe lazy when you're playing a role-playing game. I mean, maybe you're just not 100%, maybe you're a little tired, so it's very easy just to sit there, roll your dice. Okay, I swing. I hit. Yeah. If you ever go to a convention where they're playing Savage Worlds, you'll know. Because you'll hear them. You will hear the yells, the screams, the cries of triumph, and the wails of defeat, because people have a lot of fun at these games. There's a lot of energy. I think a lot of that is you're not having to mess with a bunch of fiddly little details. You can actually focus on your character and having a great time.
I am worthy.
But, again, it's easy to become lazy and just kind of, Tricks are a way to avoid that, to make things a little more cinematic. Basically, a trick can be a mental trick or a physical one. If you can think of, or imagine, someone hits you. You fall to the ground. You grab some sand or some dirt in your hand. So as your foe comes, looming over you, you throw that in his eyes to try and blind him. That's a trick. Or maybe you're a swashbuckler. Your opponent has his legs spread a little too wide, so you feint an attack and make it look as though you're going to drive your blade through him. He defends, when in reality, You slide underneath his legs. You're now behind him. You have the advantage. That's a trick. Maybe you go charging at your opponent, and at the last moment, instead of attacking, you run along the wall. Maybe you do a flip over his head. Again, landing behind him, you have the advantage. That's a trick. Or maybe, you know your opponent has a very short fuse. So you start taunting him, making fun of him. Think Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a classic example of that. He will taunt his foes and make them so angry they make mistakes. That's a trick. And that's in Savage Worlds. And it can make things a lot more interesting. I mean, in any game, if you find yourself, I hit, no. Be energetic. Do something. Take a look at the tricks in the book. You won't regret it. There are a few items when it comes to Savage Worlds I have noticed online that have, some of them bug the crap out of me. Some of them I don't understand. But I will let my alter ego, the 5th level rogue, tell you all about that. We have a segment called Tabletop Thoughts with a 5th level rogue. Why a 5th level rogue? It's a long story, but basically, growing up while we were playing D&D, our DM, we don't know if it was boredom, we don't know if he got too excited and started grabbing monsters that were well above our pay grade, but we all knew no one got past 5th level. 5th level was the death level. So I figure for things that might be on the fence as far as people's opinions they might not like too much, let a 5th level rogue do it. He's gonna die, what does he care? So anyway, take a look at Tabletop Thoughts with a 5th level rogue.
Welcome to Tabletop Thoughts with a 5th level rogue.
Hey everyone. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, that's the same guy. No. I'm Evil Ralph. You ever watch Star Trek? Yeah. That's where we're going with this. You better like it. What I'm here to talk today about is 3 things I've noticed. I go browsing around on different RPG forums, talking to people in person, overhearing conversations at comic stores. Savage Worlds, when it first came out, the sample characters, the archetype characters, the sample adventure in the back, it was all pulp. And I think that cemented in many people's minds that Savage Worlds was a pulp game and could only do pulp. I'm a huge horror gamer. Call of Cthulhu is hands down my favorite game of all time. I run horror elements in pretty much every game I ever run. Even Star Wars, come on, I made fungus-like zombies that, when you hit them, spores blew out and you could get infected. It's one of the things I love about Savage Worlds and why it's my favorite, largely it's my go-to system. If I want one rule set for anything, it's Savage Worlds. Why? If I'm not making it myself, just the settings you could buy, whether made by Pinnacle or some licensee, they've all got elements of horror. So when I hear people say, Savage Worlds can't do horror, I'm like, what the? Okay, Rippers. This was the 3rd game setting, I believe, that came out for Savage Worlds. First was Evernight, then Necessary Evil. Rippers, Victorian horror. Hey, the flagship that got Pinnacle on the map, Deadlands, Western horror. What came after that? Hell on Earth, post-apocalyptic horror. Most recently, Deadlands Noir. Hey, noir horror. World War II, horror. Licensees, Achtung Cthulhu, horror. Realms of Cthulhu, horror. World of the Dead, horror. Hey, what's this? Horror Companion. So if you're telling me that Savage Worlds cannot do horror, you have not read the game, you have not played the game. Or I'm sorry to say it, someone at your game table is doing something wrong. Now another thing I've been hearing complaints about, and one of these was from my own game table. Matter of fact, I have one player who largely just doesn't play anymore if we're doing Savage Worlds. Why? The shaken effect. If you've not played Savage Worlds, the shaken effect, the way that works, if you take damage, you may take a wound. And if you take a wound, you're also what's called shaken. Effectively, that means you can't really do much other than defend yourself and move until you can make a roll to get out of being shaken. In real life terms, if you've ever been in a fight, if you've ever sparred and gotten clocked, or watched a boxing match or MMA, you see somebody, get rocked hard and they're just kind of out of it for a couple of seconds until they can get their bearings again. That's shaken. Out on the football field, a guy gets nailed. Boom! Shaken. If you just fall down and hurt yourself, maybe you ever stubbed your toe and it hurts so bad you're just kind of hopping up and down holding your toe, or maybe you're on the ground in a fetal position because you can't do anything because it hurts so bad. Shaken. It happens. And in the game, I think some people just have very, very, very poor dice rolls. To get out of being shaken, there are a couple of ways. One, you spend a Benny. You're no longer shaken. Congratulations. You can spend that Benny at any time in the round. Or, when it comes to be your turn, if you're shaken, if you can make a spirit roll. Difficulty is a 4. Not shaken. The guy at my table, he couldn't make his rolls. Ever. There's even an edge that gives you a +2 to those spirit rolls to get out of being shaken. The difficulty is a 4. You get a +2, you're halfway there. So I see people complaining about this, and I'm not sure, do they have bad dice rolls? And what about it is so upending that you just claim you can't stand the game? I don't get that. I don't get that at all. Try it again. You might like it. Final thing, and this is something that if you come from, say, a certain D20 based game, we'll say it, Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. If you come from either of those games, they have challenge ratings. Adventures, creatures, they have a challenge rating. So you have an idea, a group of so many players at this level should be able to possibly conquer this. That's not the way Savage Worlds works. It's more fluid. And you kind of got to play the game a few times to get your mind around that aspect, because there's one thing that can kill your game. The fact that the dice ace. What that means is, say you want to do a cinematic kind of thing where the adventure begins and the PCs are on hand as the big bad makes his first appearance. He does his thing, and then your idea is he makes his appearance and then leaves, and then doesn't reappear until, the climax of the adventure. What if the guy with the dagger throws the dagger, first scene, throws the dagger at the big bad guy. You're thinking, no way. But he gets a raise on his attack roll. He hits, obviously. And then when he rolls damage, he aces. Again, and again, and again. Even if he's rolling die 4s, 4s add up pretty quick. I've seen it happen. So what possibly could happen is the little guy, little hobbit with a dagger, takes out Venger from the D&D cartoon in one fell stroke. Suddenly your big adventure centered around Venger and his defeat, gone. It's not a flaw of the system. It's just something you need to be prepared for. You can't just look at your challenge rating and go, okay, we're good. Take precautions. If you're using a big bad and you want to make that appearance, make sure he has a lot of minions around to occupy the PCs. Just to be safe, throw up a shield spell. arcane armor, something. Protect your guy. And don't forget, you've got GM Bennies back there as well, just like the players have Bennies. I've never had a problem with this. Only problem I ever have is, honestly, at the climax of the adventure, because I have a tendency to kind of hoard my Bennies for, all the bad guys. Climax of the adventure, I've got this giant stack. I'm ready. My rolls fail me every time I try to spend Bennies to soak damage. One after another, after another, after another. Of course, all the players are behind the screen going, yeah, I've learned to live with it. Because half the time, prior to that event, my dice rolls are excellent. I'm acing constantly. It's just that, I don't know, maybe my dice are cursed when it comes to the big bad guy. Who knows? But anyway, those are three things, three fallacies, or at least things you need to be aware of and can easily be controlled when it comes to Savage Worlds. Can't do horror? Wrong. Shaking sucks? No. Exploding dice, it ruins the curve. If you're a math nut, maybe that gets under your skin. I am not a math nut. My group, this is our go-to game system. Hands down. That's something I have looked for years, was one system to rule them all. Savage Worlds is it. So there you go. Words of wisdom from a 5th level rogue. Okay, there you have it. And yes, if you're wondering, I was not supposed to have this goatee as I'm filming this. I was supposed to shave it off. I did not do that. So the whole Star Trek bit kind of bit the dust. Anyway, I should also point out, when it comes to horror games, some systems can help, some systems can detract from it. In reality, when it comes to horror, if you want to play a horror game, if you want to be scared or try to be scared, if you want to have fun in that manner, it's really an agreement between the GM and the players. If everyone is on board, you're going to have a hell of a time just having fun scaring each other. But if not, even a dedicated horror game like Call of Cthulhu can become comedy. So make of that what you will. Last thing about Savage Worlds, this is just a rule book. And I think that can be a detractor for some people. They're looking for, I don't know, thematic stories to, kind of give them examples of how things work or whatnot. There are, I'm not sure the exact count, 5, 6 little adventures in the back of the book. They're pre-generated characters. The adventures are all different genres. And that's really all you need. With just this book, dice, and a set of cards, you can do anything. Whether you're making up your own stuff or converting from another system, you're set. But if you don't have time for that, if you're really crunched, or maybe you're just kind of tired and you just want someone else to make it all up for you, you want a pre-canned setting, they've got you covered. Pinnacle Entertainment Group has some awesome settings out there. Not to veer one way or another, but Deadlands, Solomon Kane. So, between Pinnacle Entertainment Group and the various licensees, there are a lot of settings covered. Whether it's fantasy, superheroes, space, World War II, there's so much stuff. And there's more and more coming out all the time. And there's also collectibles. I'm a collector. I've got a lot of games I've never played, but I've got them. And the games that I do play and I really like, if there are accessories, I have a tendency to buy them. Like custom Bennies for Savage Worlds, I've got a bunch of these for different settings. Realms of Cthulhu, Hellfrost, Solomon Kane, Deadlands Noir. Dice, there are Savage Worlds dice. Instead of me sitting here telling you about it, let me show you. We have a little thing called the Arcane Vault. Let's go inside and see what Savage Worlds has to offer.
If you're not just a player, but you're also a collector, as I am, Savage Worlds will keep you very, very happy. Especially of late with the numerous successful Kickstarters they've had. Because not only do you have just the core book, but you've got numerous settings from both Pinnacle Entertainment and their various licensees. And then for all those settings, you've got specialized Bennies, soundtracks, GM screens, card decks, you name it, it's out there, figure flats. There's also I didn't mention it previously, but there's a two-pack. It's an adventure deck and an action deck. The action deck is your initiative deck, like you would normally use. It's a standard deck of playing cards, only the artwork is all geared towards Savage Worlds. The adventure deck, on the other hand, is a little something to give players different options and also to keep the GM on his toes. I mean, it could be something as simple as a card they can play it, so the damage they just took, they didn't take it. The shot missed. Or maybe the damage they just did gets doubled, or they get a bonus to hit. Or maybe reinforcements arrive. Or maybe there's a certain NPC that they're trying to woo and they just can't make any headway. They play the love interest card. And that's an interesting one because I actually had a player in a fantasy game who was he had sold his soul for his friend's life and death came calling to collect his soul. He played the love interest card. So that opened up an entirely new plot in the game. It was pretty freaking awesome, I gotta say. So definitely check out all the accessories available for Savage Worlds because the game alone is freaking awesome. The settings are freaking awesome. You start looking at some of the other stuff and man, it just blows your mind. So that's our Arcane Vault. Let's head back over for the review.
Last thing.
Tamales.
This is the Savage Worlds Explorers Edition. You can see it's fairly small, has everything you need, and it's $10 freaking dollars. $10, complete game. $10, a set of dice, a set of cards, you're ready to roll. That's it. Consider some games that are $50, $60 right now. I mean, games are getting hella expensive. $10. You and everyone at your table can have one of these. And if you're wanting to get younger players into it, a week or two's allowance, done. You can't go wrong. I mean, it's just freaking awesome. Fits in a backpack easily, you can carry it around. It is softback. So if you are the sort who, you gotta have a hardback. This is still available. This is the just the Savage Worlds Deluxe regular version, hardback. They're still available, but my understanding is once these are gone, that's it. There will be no more printed. It will be only the Explorers Edition. $10, a full game that can handle any genre you throw at it. It's very fast. It's easy on the GM. Players have a lot of fun with the various, knickknacks and whatnot that can be done. It's very cinematic. It's pretty freaking awesome. And there's not a lot of, bookkeeping. I love this game. It is my go-to system. If I'm making something up, I'm using this. If I'm converting something, yeah, I'm using this. And hell, when you think of all the settings that are available, you look at half of my game library, Savage Worlds. And now with Kickstarter, there are a lot more games coming out with a lot of bundled accessories. If you get on one of these Kickstarters, you can get a lot of cool stuff for a lot cheaper than you might get if you waited until it was available commercially. So keep an eye out for that. Head over to the Pinnacle Entertainment Group forums. You will not find a group of nicer people. They're freaking awesome. Super nice, very, very helpful. Everyone is just very excited, very creative, very energetic. Clint Black, the guy who heads up the forums over there, is a mastermind when it comes to the Savage World system. If you've got a question, if it hasn't been answered, he's your man. So I think I have touted the wonders of Savage Worlds enough. I love it. I think you should definitely give it a try. One thing, do not just read it and then think, no, play it. I think a lot of people I've seen who said, I don't like this, I don't like that, they never actually played it. And they admit that. They've read it. And something about, I don't know, just reading this, you might not be able to fully visualize or grasp some of the nuances that become readily apparent when you actually play the game. Go to the website, peginc.com. There are test drive rules that are free. Download those. Try it. It's a test drive. See if you like it. Odds are you will. And if you do, there's a lot waiting for you. So, my verdict, freaking awesome. You to get it? Go buy it. Now. So that's it for our premiere episode. Check us out next time. I do believe I'm going to take a look at the Dragon Age role-playing game. All things dragon. That's my crazy look. That's all I got. See you next time.